Joe, it doesn't look like we have anyone else waiting to join. So at
Okay,
6:07,
let's
going to
I
begin.
always have an expression that the world is ran by those who show up for the most part. Okay, let's kick it off. Thank you very much, everyone, for being here this morning for Get Appointed. This was actually an idea that came from a a mis- not a mistake, but from a different idea. About 2 months ago, I was on a call with um, Controller Betty Yee, and we were talking about appointments, but we were talking about appointments to another organization. And she said, "You know what? I let's talk about appointments. I know Secretary Rivera," and she said, "I would love to help you connect with the governor's office and to set something up." So about 2 months later, here we are, and it's fantastic that we have Secretary Rivera with us this evening, representing Governor Gavin Newsom's office. And we have my co-host this evening is Widad Schulte from the Greater San Diego area. Thank you, Widad, for stepping in to help us out this evening. And just this organization, this event was made by the hands of many organizations. They are, as you can see on the slides, I'll just read them. The Islamic Sharia Council of Southern California, Northern California Islamic Council, the Central Valley Islamic Council, the Shia Muslim Council of Southern California, AMBA, Muslim Bar Association of Southern California, Muslim Delegates and Allies, the Muslim Public Affairs Council, Bayan College, CARE California, and also sponsored by I live in the city of Claremont, and this evening, Claremont Lincoln University was our generous sponsor of this event, and they will be presenting information on their new Masters in Public Administration, and they'll be giving us some information about that. So with no further ado, I wanted to, again, thank everyone for being here. And we have, here's our introduction. And what I wanted to do is oftentimes, from what I understand, and I'm going to learn about this with you, that navigating an appointment process with the governor's office can be very complicated. And so I have two friends on here that I wanted to invite who've successfully navigated the process and becoming appointed to the governor's office. For those political, for lack of better terms, nerds out there, there's only one person who has more appointments than the governor of California, and that's the occupant of the White House, the president. He has about, he or she who's in the White House has about 4,000 appointments that they will make in their first term. But like they call California its own state, nation state, Governor Newsom, and if, I'm sure the Secretary Rivera can give me the exact number, but from what I read online, it's approximately 3,000 appointments between, I don't know if that's over two terms or if that's for beginning when the governor is sworn in at the beginning of his term. But over the course of his tenure, he will have 3,000 appointments to make. And we hope that many people, as they learn more about the process, find out where they want to serve and apply. The person who receives those applications is here with Secretary Rivera. So I get the honor of going into our segment called Navigating the Appointment Process. And again, I have two friends here that are here to help us tell about their personal stories and how they successfully navigated the appointments process with the governor's office. And I have the honor of introducing my friend and colleague, Dr. Angelo Farouk. He was appointed by Governor Newsom as chairman of the California Workforce Development Board, the CWDB. The CWDB is responsible for governing all federal workforce funds to the state and developing a common policy framework for the overall $6 billion annual system. Angelo was elected to the Board of Education for Riverside Unified School District. He's been there since 2015. He's appointed as co-chair for the California Treasurer Fiona Ma's Housing and Economic Development Advisory Council, and was also appointed by California Controller Betty Yee on her Council of Economic Advisors. And we're not done yet, folks. Angela is also chairman of Planned Parenthood, Pacific Southwest Action Funds, and serves on the board of directors for Planned Parenthood affiliates of California. He is the founding board of directors for Excite Technology. It's an incubator and accelerator and director of economic development and innovation for the University of California, Riverside. Angelo is earned his bachelor's degree from the University of Berkeley, California, and his executive master's and his doctorate of policy planning and development degrees from the University of Southern California. And with no further ado, Dr. Farooq. Thanks, Angelo.
Thank you so much, Joe, for that really thoughtful introduction and inviting me here. It's really great to be here, and especially with such distinguished people like my friend, Dr. Kazi, Controller Yee, and Appointment Secretary, just a really great group of people. And, I just want to begin by just congratulating, all of the people that are involved in this, just for showing that interest and wanting to engage in public service in general, because it's something that, requires a lot of effort, and it's an honorable way to make a difference. And I think it's really important, especially not just from a diversity standpoint for the Muslim community to be represented, but really just the extraordinary talents and skills that the Muslim community has to offer, and to be able to provide that for the state of California and in alignment with the vision of Governor Gavin Newsom. So I just think that's fantastic. I also just want to add too that regional representation is really important, and I really admire Governor Newsom's commitment about California for all. As someone who's born and raised in the Inland Empire, I've always felt like our region has a meaningful voice, and I think that's really an important aspect of this, appointments and representation as well. There's a regional aspect. So, Joe, you shared a little context already about the Workforce Board of what it is. This position is established by Congress, actually, Workforce and Innovation Opportunities Act. So there's state workforce boards in all 50 states. And in California, we serve 1.5 million people annually. And there's, outside of the legislator appointments, there's 4 state legislators. The governor appoints all of the rest, and it's primarily industry leaders, but K-12 is represented with State Superintendent Tony Thurmond, and it's a really good cross-representation of the system. And so it's an honor to serve there, and especially with the pandemic and the exacerbated inequities of the workforce system, and getting people back to work has been really important. So there's 2 aspects to my appointment process. One was being appointed on the board itself, and then the second aspect was about being chair. And so I was originally appointed to the board actually under Governor Brown's administration back in 2013. And so I think, one, it's important to have credibility in the field that you're interested in. For me, I have a passion for education and workforce. And at the local, I'm based in Riverside County. At the County Workforce Development Board, I actually have served for 14 years on that board. And so I think not every board is structured that way, where there is like a local, in my case, through the Board of Supervisors, opportunity to get that experience. So that approach might not apply again to every position. But for me, that really helped a lot, because I already was very familiar with the system. I already had interfaced a lot with the state board in that capacity. Again, I think that's important. The second thing is, to actually, submit the application itself. I've heard so many people, when they come to me showing interest, and they're trying to get people to advocate for them, and they haven't even submitted an application. The application is just it's critical that you do that, and I think it's important in the manner that you do it too, to be very transparent and forthright. Reputation is everything. I think in life in general, but especially in the political realm, and knowing that what you're doing is not just about having a role of leadership for yourself, but that it's a reflection of the governor, the administration, and the interests of the state of California. So it's really important to be very forthright with everything, and knowing that and I know our Secretary Rivera speaks to this often, that the governor is very good about second chances, and so people shouldn't feel like that they eliminate themselves from consideration. They truly believe that they're worth it. I think in my experience, it was important to notify my state legislator representatives, and I think that's a good thing to do probably in general. It's even a part of the application, whether they're Democrat or Republican, and so their voice can be important in this process as well. I mentioned that I already had been on the radar of the staff side of my agency, just by virtue of being active at the regional level. And I found and again, in my experience, that the staff were consulted and their input was factored into the appointment process. And so for me, I found that to be, a helpful, beneficial thing. For me, the process took about, I think, a little over 6 months or so. There was a vacancy at the time when I was expressing my interest. But I think there's a lot of factors which, again, Secretary Rivera could probably speak to more in depth about when and why, different timings occur. So I'm not even going to pretend to understand that. But for me, it was about a 6-month process. And then after Governor Newsom was elected, our chairman at the time was Mike Rossi. He decided to retire and step down. And so there was a vacancy at the chair position. And obviously, in our role, we don't serve in terms. We serve at the pleasure of the governor, just indefinitely. So one, I didn't want to be presumptive that I would necessarily have the opportunity to stay on. And then two, there is no formal process, about who's going to be the chair per se. It's not a like a vote from the board. It's the administration's discretion. And so for me, I was very fortunate that people like Betty Yee, who's a mentor of mine, helped give me some insights. I had an opportunity to meet with Secretary of Labor Julie Su, who's now transitioning at the Biden-Harris administration, and she encouraged me to consider the chair position. Because it's an important part of complementary part of working with her in her role in the administration. And so for me, that was obviously very humbling and gratifying. The one stakeholder outside of Secretary of Labor that I also met with, again, just sharing my personal experience, I'm not implying that this is what it would be relevant for other people's position. Art Pulaski is also a member of our, has been a colleague of mine, on the state board. And it was recommended for me to speak with him as well. So I had a really good conversation with him. So those were kind of my experiences. And from there, I was just told that I was going to be serving the chairmanship. I think this was like within like the first half of the first year of the governor being elected. And in terms of being an effective board member, I just think it's important to take the position seriously. Again, it's way beyond just your personal interest. To do your due diligence, being prepared, not just from the point that you're serving and moving forward, but even studying the issues and being able to hit the ground running prior to being appointed. I can't emphasize enough that whether it's before you're serving, during, and after, that your actions and your words are a reflection of the governor and the state, and you have to take a lot of pride and be very conscientious about that, and be aware of what protocols exist too. If a topic involving your position involves the media, be aware of how you're supposed to handle these things, and being aware of the scope and limitations also of your role, and not trying to be more than what you need to be, serving just what you're supposed to be serving for. And the last thing I'll just say is, I think it's really important for all of us that are in these positions and have these experiences to be available as a mentor and a resource for others. And so I always enjoy, participating in things like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Farooq. It sounds like because of the nature of what the workforce development does, that there were many spokes of that come together on that with education, labor, policy advice, and I'm sure there's even some kind of environmental things that kind of go into the workforce development. So it's much broader than what it just says. So thank you for that. Thank you for the nuances and the details, and thank you for that. But I'm sure we'll have some more questions for you. So we're going to move on to Widad. Would you like to introduce Dr. Faisal?
Hi, I'm very impressed by your qualification and the lessons you have suggested, Angela Farooq. Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. I'm here to present Dr. Faisal Qazi. Faisal Qazi is a neurologist in Southern California, a co-founder of private practice subspecialty, the Neurology Group, one of the largest groups in Southern California. He currently serves as a commissioner on California Commission on Aging. He co-founded and continues to serve as the president of MINDS, which stands for Medical Network Devoted to Service, a community service nonprofit based in Southern California, which focuses on providing free of cost specialty healthcare to patients in need and those with neurological disabilities. In 2015, in the aftermath of the tragic mass shooting in San Bernardino, Dr. Qazi spearheaded a campaign that raised $200,000 for the victims and their families on behalf of the American Muslim community, one of the largest sums collected for this cause. Dr. Qazi is affiliated with Western University and University of California, Riverside, as Assistant Professor of Neurology. While contributing to the education of medical students, he is maintaining a private group practice at the Neurology Group. Dr. Qazi's work has been featured in interviews to NPR, CNN, LA Times, Washington Post, and PBS. He has received the honor of being listed amongst the best doctors regionally. Wow, so impressive. Thank you to be in your presence, Dr. Qazi.
Thank you, Widad, for this kind introduction. Thank you, Joseph, for spearheading the idea and coordinating the event and bringing everybody together. And thank you, Dr. Farooq, for your comments and insight. You have been a guide to me as well, so I'll mention that along the way. So I think the topic is very important for those of us who have attempted to navigate the system of appointments. It is definitely cumbersome. So any feedback and insights from for anybody who's gone through this, for those that are interested, is always valuable. And this is not an ongoing discussion. For me, as a neurologist, a lot of the patient population that I care for is elderly patient population, folks with dementia, and there's a lot of complicated family dynamics and lapses in care, places where these dementia patients can be actually placed in terms of housing or long-term facilities. And though at a social level, outside of just the medical care, we deal with a lot of those factors, and we're having to guide the families and what next steps to take and how to train themselves, what to expect as an elderly person declines. So that had been my area of interest in how to advocate for my patients, my parents as they're aging, and folks around us that really need these services. So my goal was always to be an advocate, and I attempted to find that work in through nonprofit ventures, through other social work, working with other social workers or Alzheimer's Association and groups as such. And at a policy level, I always had this inkling that, for me, I need to be an advocate and really make a difference at a bigger level, at a policy level, a policy that really works for everybody in California. And it's just that, I'm not dealing with one issue or the other, constantly year after year for patients from different facets in life and different phases in life. So that had piqued my interest as I inquired more about this Commission of Aging, and I had an interest in really getting appointed to that, but it became really a long process to really get to that point. I had gone online, I had filled out an application, a formal application, and then the website is, you have to navigate the website. Not everything is that readily easily accessible on the website, but it's doable. And so the process really starts with applying. I just wanted to make sure that an application is in front of somebody that I can discuss then with. So that's very important to get this application in. The application doesn't really ask for references any specifically, but like Dr. Farooq said, it is really a good idea that your local representatives, your state senator or state assembly person, or anybody else is familiar with your work or yourself, or at least they know, one of them know that you're applying for certain positions. I think it's helpful to know to what extent does the governor's appointment office really obtains references from them. I don't know that part, but I think that's something we'll hear from Secretary Rivera eventually. And so I had applied basically, and then I waited. The process took much longer in my case, almost 2 years. And I think there could be various reasons for that. Maybe, there wasn't a vacancy, and the vacancy did become available. There's a lot of shift in staffing, it seems like. So, and that's very common in governmental agencies. So you have to find a way to stay in touch. And I was able to do that. I was able to stay in touch with at least one contact person via email. Every 3-4 months, we'll touch base and then see where things are. And this at least my application was handed to any number of changing staff members that were managing it. So that was helpful. The resume sort of items that were helpful to me is that, during the campaign for Governor Newsom, I had participated in policy committees. I worked on the health policy committee, and I also had an opportunity to serve on housing and how it relates to senior housing. It was based on some propositions at that time that we're doing analysis of propositions. So I had a chance to co-author some papers. So I had some, policy analysis background with these campaign folks. But then, if those campaign folks were going to be in the legislative capacity, advocacy capacity, so there was some familiarity, at least, with my work with the team. So that's always helpful to have that level of participation. I also had been, I had long-term interest in mostly local city-based issues. So I had served on a commission within my city. I live in Fullerton. I also ran for city council, and successfully so last year. But right about then, when the city council campaign was coming to an end in October of 2020, my appointment was confirmed. And the process for that really was, I recall at least having 3 different interviews. You go through, you obviously work with one of the deputy appointment secretaries, and then so there's some discussions on gauging your interest, and then when the position becomes available, and they'll discuss with you your background, and then it may go up to a formal interview in a way, or vetting with even a cabinet member. So I had those 2 discussions formally, and then also I spoke to the executive director of the commission. So all these commissions have staff. These are staff that are state employees, so their salaries are covered by the state, and they are depending on the size of the commission, you have allotted certain number of staff. My commission, as California Commission on Aging, has 3 full-time staff members, and I had a chance to discuss with the executive director, who actually had been running this agency or this commission for quite some time, for years, over a decade or so. So she was very knowledgeable, and we touched upon ideas about what sort of expertise does one bring to the table. And, so in my discussions with her, I kind of discussed what literature that I read and what data of information that I, absorb and analyze as part of my professional field. And it was, and even she was convinced that, okay, well, this kind of trajectory can bring novel ideas to the table in our discussions. And, there's a place for that. So just some level of expertise, at least interest or passion in terms of doing the research or work, in that field is helpful for sure. I don't think there's a requirement per se that you have to come from that specific field. But in my commission, for example, there are 19 commissioners. allotted to this commission, and most of them come from the field of aging, from nonprofit work, or having had a background in a government agency that had worked on issues of aging. And what's fun, I always thought, that if you want to be an effective advocate for your constituents, or in my case, my patients and my family members and my community, one of the things is that you need to learn the governance process of governance. And I personally really enjoy that process. In this commission, I'm having to analyze the budget, for example, and how it relates to the programs in aging, and all the policy and legislative work and the bills that are put up in state Senate and state assembly. And I'm a member also of the legislative subcommittee of my commission, and really I enjoy that kind of analytic process. And so it allows me to participate at a subcommittee level. Actually, it's actually more fun, even because it's a smaller group, so you do get to hash out your ideas. You have more open, more detailed discussion on issues. So it's a lot more fun if you're interested in that kind of work. You'd really get into the nitty gritty of how policy is moved up, shifted up, and how budget is allocated. And my commission's goal, of course, is to advocate on behalf of seniors in California. So I think the commission is really designed very effectively, and it has all sub-level expertise to be able to do that. So I really enjoy that part, and I think many folks that are here that have worked, I see my friend Devon Gray, who used to work for governor's office and ran for Placertia City Council with me, along with me last year. I mean, you have the analytical experience in policy work, so that I think draws a lot of us that are interested in developing more acumen in that area. And then so now that I'm in the process for a few months, 6 months or so, I'm really not only enjoying it, but I think, like Dr. Farooq mentioned, you do want to study stuff in depth. I mean, there's material sent to you almost on a monthly basis. In California, for example, the governor just endorsed and launched an entire master plan on aging, and it's a massive document. They were, I'm glad my executive director is not here, but Catherine Rivera, just pretend you didn't hear this. They went through 800 recommendations, and I'm glad I didn't have to go through those 800 recommendations, but they did a nice, concise, precise document with fewer of those recommendations, and it's really nice to read. And it hits all the plans, and as expected from my time of involvement in the policy arena, policy committees for this Governor Newsom is very forward-looking and very decisive and committed to moving this agenda forward, which is, in our case, what's beneficial for the seniors in California. And then, aside from that, those are just mechanics and how you can be effective in doing your research and participating in conversations. And if you have legislative acumen or legislative contacts, I suppose one can also discuss it with, as Assembly bills, Senate bills come, you can gain more insight by talking to them directly or their offices. And that's always useful as in terms of doing background homework. But technically speaking, once you're in, you're supposed to fill out a form called Form 700. Without going into details it's a form that one really fills out in running a campaign for a city or school board or state office. You also fill that out in terms of being on a city commission, and it's something you fill out on an annual basis. And it really it's a big application, but it just talks about it. It wants to ensure that you don't have any conflicts of interest.
Economic interest.
Because we're big on that. So that part is very important. But Joe, and with that, I'll stop here, and we'd love to hear from Secretary Rivera further, but we'll be available for any questions.
Great, thank you, Dr. I'm going to call you Dr. Faisal. That's fine, Dr. Kazi. So thank you very much for your insight. And it sounds like from what Dr. Farooq and Dr. Faisal Kazi are saying is that it's important to do your homework with these boards and with these commissions. And so, but I'm sure if you are appointed ahead of time, you probably have already done your homework, and that's why one of the reasons as to why they're appointing you. So thank you very much with that. And we come to our main part of our program. I have the honor of introducing Secretary Catherine Rivera Hernandez. She was appointed by Governor Gavin Newsom in June of 2019 to serve as the appointment secretary. Prior to her appointment, Ms. Rivera Hernandez served 3 administrations as a board member on the Agricultural Labor Relations. Uh, you know, labor relations, especially with agriculture, is a big thing in California, as we know. Beginning with her appointment by Governor Gavin Newsom in November 2002. Prior to joining the ALRB, Ms. Rivera Hernandez served as the Chief Deputy Cabinet Secretary for Governor Gray Davis. As Chief Deputy, Ms. Rivera Hernandez served as the governor's liaison to various state agencies, departments, and boards, including the Health and Human Services Agency, the Department of Corrections and the Rehabilitation and Office of Emergency Services, and the Department of Food and Agriculture, and there is more. As a member of the Cabinet Office, Ms. Rivera Hernandez was responsible for overseeing the development and implementation of the administration's policy and legislative initiatives within these agencies. Mrs. Rivera Hernandez also served as special legal counsel, working closely with the Legal Affairs Secretary on significant legal matters arising within the agencies and departments, and where Mrs. Rivera Hernandez received her education in business management from Arizona State University and obtained her law degree from Bolt Hall at the University of California, Berkeley. Go Bears. And she was co-editor-in-chief of the La Raza Law Journal. With no further ado, Secretary Rivera. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate this this opportunity, and to also do it with my friend and former colleague, Controller Betty Yee. The extra part of this that I was enjoying was really hearing from the appointees. Dr. Farooq and Dr. Kazi are both really making this administration look good. Just for the record, you do not have to be a doctor to get an appointment. But I rarely get those types of insights from appointees. As they know, we send out the press release and then we it's like sending our children off to an adoptive home to serve. But so it was just really great to hear your stories. So I think that when people think about the appointments process, they think about it as an insider's game, where you have to know somebody to be appointed. I will say that with 3,000 appointments, that includes 300 board and commission slots, and those are rotating. So people are constantly, as we know, especially during COVID, making life changes. So there was a mention before about how many in a term. It's just a constant churn. People are terming off of boards every month. People are deciding they want to retire. People definitely during COVID made some different life choices and decided I want to go spend time with my grandchildren or whatever it might be, or just another job. And so it is just a constant churn. And so we wouldn't get very far if you had to actually know somebody high up in order to get into an appointment. With that being said, I will say if you do know somebody, absolutely use them. You don't have to necessarily know Betty Yee. I favor her. I know that she only recommends quality people, but definitely that is, of course, part of it. So really in this discussion, I want to remove that mystery around the appointments process and make it as transparent as possible. One is I may be called a secretary, but this is not a glamorous job. This is, people think of it as, it's like you sit there and you make these big decisions. We are an employment agency. And so we have to rely on our online application process. I like to tell the story of Steve Gordon, who was sitting in his office in the Bay Area, reading, the 20th story about the woes of the Department of Motor Vehicles, put in his application. It was pulled off, and thank goodness he said yes, and we had him in position as the director of the Department of DMV when COVID hit. His expertise in technology and management was absolutely critical to getting us through that time. So no, you don't really need to know someone, but you do, as mentioned, have to fill out the application, and that is found at the www.gov.ca.gov website, as pointed out, and I appreciate it being pointed out because I'm fighting for resources. That system is about 30 years old. It's been used for many, many years. So pre-COVID, I was hoping for an update. COVID hit, no update. So I apologize because you're not wrong about it's a little unwieldy. But what you can find there, in addition to the application, is a list of the board and commission vacancies that is updated monthly. You can see a list of paid administration positions where we are either having trouble recruiting or it's very specific for what we're looking for. You can also see a list of deputies and their portfolios. And that's something that I added when I came on. For some reason, it just wasn't there before. I really want people who are interested to be able to go directly to the most knowledgeable person in what they're interested in, to talk, ask their questions, ask them, what are you looking for in your next appointee? And, be able to kind of talk through that in order to be more helpful and to encourage folks. I don't want people to feel like they send an application off into the ether and then they just sit and wait. You can always reach out to them. The application itself is fairly detailed and it asks some really sensitive questions. People often ask me, what is the governor looking for in an appointee? I repeat what he has said many times. He is looking for an administration that looks like the people it serves. But when we talk about diversity, it is not, we're far beyond, gender, ethnicity, of course, those matter, but it's about our diversity of experiences. It's about your upbringing, where you were brought up, where you live now, what in your personal and professional life has led you to this point of wanting to serve. So my advice to people is take every opportunity to share that story. As Dr. Kazi pointed out, often people will tell me, well, I didn't fill it out because I didn't think that I was going to be a strong candidate. This happened in my life, that happened in my life. We know people have had varied experiences. People have had successes and failures in their life. People try businesses that don't work. People make poor choices in their youth that, that come back. What we're concerned about, and with this governor in particular, and I've known a few, he is here for a comeback story. He just wants to know what happened, what did you take away from that, and how have you used that as you moved forward. So please don't take yourself out of the game, is what I tell people. Engage us, let's have that discussion. And people should also know that the applications are completely confidential. They cannot be disclosed to the press, the public. They are not even shared outside of the appointments unit with anybody. They are purely for our purposes. So, people should just be honest on there, and then let's, discuss if there are any issues or questions that you think might come up. Now, when we review the applications, we do look at what you might have listed as an area of interest. But what I tell people is, I think people have the idea that they put in the application and then when there's an opening, we pull everybody that has applied for that slot. That's just not the case. Very often, especially with the boards and commissions, it's a puzzle that we have to put together. We don't want everybody who's the same, right? And so we are looking at what skill set is rolling off of the board. Do we need a manager? Do we need a marketing person? Do we need a communications, a lawyer, a financial guru? And then also, again, as I mentioned, what does the gender and ethnicity makeup look like? But as mentioned earlier, the other thing that has really played into this is geography. This administration and this governor specifically told me when I came in, Central Valley, Inland Empire, when we looked at the areas in their representation, and this is across the board, they were just lacking. And so we are really focused on increasing that representation everywhere. So if you look at our appointments, you will see that. So what we do is we put what we call unicorns. We put the unicorn into the system. We ask for this XY criteria, and then we pull those people out. Now, very often they are not necessarily people that have said this is what they want to do. So we cold call people all the time. I've called people and they've said, sorry, I didn't pick up. I thought you were a telemarketer. And I said, oh, I am a telemarketer. And I think you would be a great fit for this. Let me tell you why. So, that is really how the process ends up working out. And it's okay to say no. People tell me no every day. And it doesn't mean we're not going to come back to you that's next time that your name comes up, or that we're not going to consider you at some time for what you actually put your name in for. People, we are trying to find the right fit, but we want to also reach out because some people didn't think of themselves in that, sort of capacity. And so, they think, okay, I hadn't thought about that, but maybe I will try that. I mean, I know that was my response when I got my cold call for this job. So, I was at the board level and they called and there's like, you ever thought of doing this? I said, I absolutely have not thought of doing that, but here I am. So we can be very convincing, but again, it is all about trying to find the right fit for the individual and for the board. If there is something that you for sure know that you're interested in, this is what you want to do, I suggest Googling it. That will tell you many things. The board website will obviously tell you how often they meet, how long the meetings are, the agenda, the minutes. It will tell you how complex the issues are, the types of issues, to see if it's something that you really are interested in doing, right? The other thing that it will tell you is how controversial a certain board or commission may be. If you're the type of person that doesn't want to see your name in the paper, that's a good way to find out if that's a possibility. So after we go through the process, we start narrowing down the different people that we've pulled off. They now have said that they are interested in pursuing this opportunity. And so we settle on a group of applicants and we put them through, as described, a series of interviews. You will often interview at a department level. You may then interview at an agency level. You will always, it doesn't matter what the position is, interview at the governor's office level. With the person from my team, the appointments person who you have now been speaking to on a regular basis, along with the policy person, usually from the cabinet office that works in that area as well. And this should not scare people. We're not there, obviously, as I mentioned, we're there to encourage and to learn so that we can learn more about you, learn what we didn't get maybe from the application. We also talk a lot about fun facts. I know it sounds silly, but when I go in with the governor, he's not asking me, well, where did they go to school? And, what did they do at this job or that at that job? He knows those boxes have already been checked. This is his only chance to actually get to know this appointee, because he doesn't interview except for at the secretary level. He doesn't interview the appointees. So this is his only opportunity. So we talk about the person, we tell the story. This is what they did. This is why. This is what they've been doing. They happen to coach their, kids' baseball team. They happen to have created some sort of patent for something else. They traveled to some, country to help kids. I mean, we just tell the story so that he really understands who he is bringing into his administration. His most common question to me, especially if it's, say, a board like the podiatry board, is why do they want to do this? And so it's all about conveying to him why this person is actually choosing to join his administration. So we go through that interview process and we settle on that recommendation. Very often it's one. If it's a board, when we have several people we're trying to slot, we may take in a slate of people. And I go in each week with him to discuss the candidates. For example, this week I took in 50 people. And so it kind of gives you an idea of the volume that we're dealing with, that the deputies are dealing with at any given time. We have a lot of people moving through the system and we lose people every week. And so we go through the process of having those discussions with the governor. He decides if he would like to approve the individuals we are recommending. And then at that point, you usually hear from one of the deputies in the appointments office that, says, congratulations, you've been chosen. And then we, of course, work on the bios for the press release. And again, there could be out 2 days later, it could be out a week later, it could be out a month later. But then that's really when the work begins. And that's the great work that Dr. Farouk and Dr. Kazi are doing. And that's really where the engagement happens. And, like I said, we want to be proud of the people that we're putting out there. I think the one thing that, the one reason we sometimes lose people is they didn't realize how much time it was going to take. And it's different for every board or commission. So we really now are focused on, that's why I tell people, make sure you look at the agendas, because people get very excited about the idea. and they're not really sure that, about the work. So we really try to address that up front. And then you're out there and you're a representative of this governor. And I know that, the governor takes that very seriously. I think Dr. Farouk's comments were right on point. I will say that although I know he is a Brown appointee and we don't reappoint because they're at pleasure, we have co-opted him. So I consider him one of our appointees. So the other things that I wanted to touch on a few things that were mentioned. One is on the references. So I always tell people it is definitely not about the quantity. And in fact, we start to get concerned if this person is coming in with 20 letters of support. It's, well, like, where are the distinguished, like on policy, or, it just gets a little bit, I think you lose the impact. So I just tell people, think about value added. I would much rather see a letter from somebody who can attest to something that you've done, or to your character, or why you might be making this decision and how they know that, versus a really important person signing up and saying, this person would be fine, on a form letter. But I mean, and those are fine too. I just really try to caution people on making sure, because I think the value added letters really have a greater degree of impact. The other thing is, once you start the process and you have a discussion, I think the advice about checking in and the patience that Dr. Kazi had, we encourage people to keep in touch. Definitely check in. I tell I've been on the other side of this process 4 times. So I've gone through it from beginning to end to confirmation. So I brought a very different perspective to this job than I think any other appointment secretary, because I had been on the other side so many times. So there were certain things that I took away from those various experiences that when I came in, I was like, we're going to do this, we're going to change that, this is how it's going to work. And one of those things is the reason we have so many deputies is that I want them to be responsive. The response may be absolutely nothing has changed yet, but check back in another month. And I said, I would rather know that than think, oh, I must be, this must be not going the right direction. Because what we do is not linear. At any given point, these deputies are working on probably 100 different appointments. Every day they're dealing, and different priorities are coming in, or they're losing a quorum and they have to shift from this priority to that priority. Or we just decide, hey, we need to go and put this board back together. So that happens. There is definitely, this is not widgets. So it is not a linear process. It is very much a prioritizing that happens with them every day. And everybody's in a different point in their process. So check in. They don't mind. Email them. They will respond. If they don't, you tell me, and I will make sure that they respond. But I have been very clear with them about maybe good news and maybe bad news, but we're going to tell people because they have their lives. They're, making decisions, and we want to make sure that they know where they stand. The other issue is around timing. So as this was a perfect example, right? Somebody could be there, go through it 6 months. Somebody could be 2 years. And that was my experience too. It was different every single time, from the time that I filled out my application, whether it was for reappointment, to the time that I was actually appointed. It all varied. One of the things that really plays into that, especially with the boards and commissions, is very often if we have terms coming up at the same time, we're putting more than one person on. So when I left the ALRB, my colleague, who was the chair, was appointed to the PUC. And we only had one other person, and then one other person came on. I mean, it was a little bit chaotic. So as I started to work on the board that I had, cared very much about and had served for 15 years, the first person that I identified on day one, let's say, waited probably good 9 months. The last person that I identified waited probably 2. So it is that sort of putting together, but again, I'm telling them, you're good. This has been approved. Although I also tell people nothing is done until the press release goes out, but the governor signed off, but I have to go find X, Y, and Z before we announce it all. So there's a lot of factors that play into that timing. The other point I wanted to make was in both of the appointees discussions, they very much are fully engaged in the areas that they are serving. We have many, many, many boards. In fact, I think most of our boards, and especially the licensing boards, have what's called public positions. And if you go, when you go to our website and you look at the board and commission vacancies, you will actually see that. It will tell you what, it may say CPA, it may say, but we usually have public positions. That is somebody who has zero interest in that area or profession. That is the accountability. Those are the people, that's the people of California watching that board. And they also tend to be our person too, that we try to connect with, because it's true. There are people who have vested interests in how things go on this board. And that public person is the one person that's supposed to sort of be the accountability spot. So those are very critical. It's also a spot that I try to encourage people who maybe don't have board experience that before, or even younger people who are earlier on in their career, to really engage and give it a shot and try to serve on a board and see if you like it. Again, often if somebody is successful in one arena, we'll move them to a higher level board. But those are what I call, they're just very hard to recruit for. You can imagine, trying to find a public member for the structural pest board, or like I mentioned, the podiatry board or the osteopathic board, who has zero experience in that area. It's a tough one for us. So we are constantly looking, and I do just encourage people that if you just have an interest in serving, we have a person who is responsible just for those boards that can help you out. So with that, I think I will stop, because I really do want to make sure that in the end, I answer the questions that people really have, since I'm here to mainly to encourage you to think about serving and to give it a shot and apply.
Great, thank you, Secretary Rivera. Fantastic. And just if I know there's over, if I said 1 million, that'd be an exaggeration, obviously. But from you talked about some of the smaller boards, but then I know that there's ones that deal with matters of freedom and justice for people, like on the probation board, all the way to dealing with $1 billion budgets at the University of being a region on the Board of Regents. For those that might require Senate confirmation, will the governor's office maybe help those prospective applicants navigate that process?
Yeah, great question. So first of all, don't be scared off by the word Senate confirmation. It sounds like a very scary process. And what that is once a person is appointed, vast majority, I want to say close to 90% of our appointments are Senate confirmable. And that is the process where after we make our appointment, there is a year for the Senate, and it's called the Senate Rules Committee. And there's 5 senators on there, led by the pro tem, schedule a hearing. Prior to that hearing, they're not there to surprise you. They're not there for gotcha. It is very much, you will get questions in advance that they will ask you to fill out. We facilitate meetings, and we help you with those responses, by the way. And then we also facilitate meetings with the senators where they will tell you if they have questions, and kind of a get to know you sort of process. And then they will ultimately schedule a hearing. And you have that hearing in front of the 5 senators where it is really your chance for them to, to get to know you, for you to answer their questions, which hopefully we know and ahead of time. And then after they vote you out, you then go to the Senate floor for a full vote. So we have a deputy that, actually we have a couple deputies that are dedicated to helping appointees go through that process, because it just, again, it sounds very scary. And it's really not. And we just want to make sure that we are fully supporting our appointees. So, and I don't know, that would be like Dr. Hazy, like, what was your process like? Did you?
Yeah, mine was not, did not require Senate confirmation.
Oh, okay. So you're one of the exceptions.
Went through vetting through your office.
Okay. And what about you, Dr. Farouk? Was yours?
Mine did not require it either.
Okay, so you're in the 10% of people that that don't require it. Okay. So yeah, so anyway, we do walk people through it, and it's a very supportive environment that is led by our team.
And we
Can I
did.
ask a question?
Please, we did. And then
Secretary,
we'll open it up to our guests.
Very quickly. The Dr. Qazi was saying his process took 2 years. So during these cases, does the applicant sometimes have access to update his or her resume?
Oh, yes. Yeah. In fact, that's true of every applicant. If anything changes or new letters come in or they change jobs, they have the opportunity, and they work directly with the deputy to get that information into their file. And I'm sorry, I think the sun is actually going down in my room. I may have to turn on the light.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's wonderful information. I'm sure our audience are very thrilled to hear all of these things. And is it possible to put the website where they can apply?
Yep.
If you don't mind, thank you very much. And I always, when I think of the name Rivera, I go back to Diego Rivera, the famous Mexican painter, one of my favorites.
Oh, it doesn't look like, I think maybe because I'm a participant, it doesn't look like I can.
Not put it in the chat.
We've disabled the chat, but we will post the website address as well as the documents that Secretary Catherine has mentioned here to all the participants that have attended.
Great, thank you.
And we will be hopefully joined by our special guest, Controller Betty Yee. I do see her spouse on the call, but they can interrupt us anytime they feel they want to get on the call. Are there any questions from any of our participants who would like to ask any of our 2 appointees or the secretary?
If they can raise their hand, we will unmute them to talk. Go ahead. The first person, actually that's Wadad. You had your question, so if anyone else has questions, you can raise your hand and we'll unmute you. And there's Betty Yee. Shall we ask her to start first, Joe, and then
please let Wadad thank you, Controller Yee, for joining us. And if Wadad, if you can introduce our special guest for the evening.
Wadad, you're on mute.
I did that. Good evening, Betty. Very nice to see you. We have very high regards for you here in San Diego, and we are very happy that you are running for the position. A native of San Francisco and a proud product of its public schools, Betty was born to immigrant parents who built a laundry and dry cleaning business from scratch in the Parkside district of the city. With the help of her family, community, public schools, and teachers who went the extra mile, Betty rose from minding the books of the family business to minding the books of the 5th largest economy in the world. She was elected to the California State Board of Equalization in 2006 and re-elected in 2010, representing close to 9 million Californians. Prior to this, Betty served as the state's budget director, currently serving as our controller. Betty has been on our side, holding government accountable, working to ensure income and retirement security, protecting our environment, and taking on big companies more interested in lining their pockets. To make sure the doors of opportunity continue to stay open so every Californian can fulfill their dreams, raise their families, and thrive. Since Betty was elected controller in 2014, she led audits of state and local government that uncovered over $4 billion in misused public funds. Betty has protected California's environment and safeguarded our pristine coastline. As chair of the State Lands Commission, she worked to decommission the last nuclear power plant in California and the last state oil platform in the Santa Barbara Channel. She has defended California's water against federal oil drilling plans and protected public access to public trust lands and beaches. Thank you, Betty, for being who you are. Wonderful.
Thank you, Widad, very much. And good evening, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here. And first, I want to say thank you to Joe and Hanif for really coordinating this event. It's such a beautiful event and just covering a lot of ground, and just so looking forward to all of you thinking about a place for yourself in serving in public service. And I also need to thank my dear friend Catherine Rivera for spending time and just has been doing such a stellar job for this administration and bringing diversity into the administration. It's something that I know the governor really treasures and embraces, and it's been a hallmark of his public service. And just can't think of a better person heading up the appointments operation for the governor. And then to two dear friends, Dr. Kazi and to Angela Farouk, who are appointees as well. And I should probably say I'm really grateful for having been appointee in a prior gubernatorial administration for Governor Gray Davis as his state budget director, and really had a phenomenal experience there. But what I wanted to just talk about tonight is just the interest that all of you have, and the importance of really bringing diversity into public appointments. And I know this is something that Catherine lives every day, but as I look at it from the perspective of what's happening, particularly during this time in our state and across this country, and I do have to give voice to obviously what's been happening in our own community and the AAPI community. When we think about just the acts of violence and hate, and obviously some of which has resulted in fatalities. You know, I think often about just what the response should be. You know, when we look at these kinds of things that are happening, and obviously much of it politically fueled, but a lot of it also has to do with the fact that we live in this wonderfully diverse state, and at the end of the day, how well do we really know one another? How well do we really understand, the communities that we live side by side with? And how well do we really understand the histories and the journeys of the different cultures that are represented here in California? And I think we live in a very special place called California. And at the same time, I think we need to do a better job of modeling, what that means in terms of a full embrace of each of our communities here in this state. And part of that has to do with who we see in these seats of public office. And when I think about the appointments process, it really is about bringing not just diversity, but diversity of thought, diversity of experience, diversity of history, diversity of cultures. Not having the so-called, kind of groupthink, in our public bodies, but really bringing that unique perspective. And so many of these appointments really are about bringing a public voice, and that public is very, very diverse today. And I think our government is much richer when we can actually have those perspectives represented. But I also think about just some of the pressing issues that we're dealing with here in California right now, not unlike the rest of the nation. We are really seeing a convergence of so many things coming together that I know for me on any given day just transcends a lot of challenges. But what gives me tremendous hope and optimism is the people with whom I have the opportunity to do my work, and how we are all committed to public service, but at the same time very much committed to a culture of really innovation. And I don't mean innovation from a technological perspective, but innovation in terms of different ways of thinking about, how we're going to do things. And a lot of that can be just as simply as, listening to someone who thinks differently from us. And I treasure that because we have tremendous opportunities to do that, certainly in my office, in the state controller's office. And so when we think about, for example, what is happening with the COVID crisis, and just was so, I don't know about you, but I thought the governor's announcement yesterday I mean, the optimism, it was almost as if today, literally, I could see people walking with a little bit of a spring in their step. That's this idea that we could be on the other side of this pandemic, sooner than I think most people would have thought is really remarkable. And being just, steadfast, forthright about, all the things that we need to continue to do to be sure that we can get there by mid-June. But I think about this pandemic and certainly all of the inequities that it's exposed. And some of it we are confronting, even as we're thinking about vaccine distribution. Some of it will stay with us even after this pandemic in terms of where we've not invested in public health, with our dollars. Looking at the fallout of those who have lost livelihoods in California, how they are represented in different sectors, what communities are specifically affected. And when I think about particularly the hospitality industry and certainly the care sectors, two very, very vulnerable sectors from a work perspective and the COVID crisis, many who work in those sectors are women. And many also really earning, barely a minimum wage. And so, these are the kinds of things that we need to recognize when we are serving, because, and I know Angela has to deal with this every day as chair of our, Workforce Investment Board, and the kinds of things that we need to do as a state to ensure that we can have a robust economy that is rebuilt, but that also can really accord every Californian financial health as well. And that to me is really the challenge that we have going forward. But how do we do that? How do we do that in a way where we really are touching every community and understanding that the needs are not a one size fits all, that there are specific needs with respect to place, geographics. There are special needs with respect to ethnicity, and there are special needs with respect to gender. As I said, these two sectors that I just mentioned, overrepresented by women, particularly women of color. And so how do we bring those experiences that really help to guide the policies that are going to need to be put in place? And the one thing I will say is that there seems to be now increased attention on just what is going to continue to have this economy be successful. And the specific focus on the care sector, I have to say, I'm very heartened by, particularly with the Biden administration in Washington as a huge plank of its economic plan and infrastructure plan is on the human infrastructure as it relates to how we're going to hopefully lift up people who are doing this work and pay them for what they are worth and how much we value what they do for in terms of taking care of our loved ones, and also looking at potential career ladders as it relates to that type of work. And so, to finally have a recognition that our economy can't be healthy and recover fully if we don't really try to tackle that aspect of our economy so that people can rely on it. Those who are doing the work can have a livelihood, and those who are dependent on that work can be full participants in our economy. So as I think about the appointments process, when I was the budget chair for the state of California, so much of our decisions about what's going to work revolves around the allocation of resources. And so even if you're serving in an advisory role on a particular body, you inevitably will come up against questions around the allocation of resources. How we prioritize those. Are the dollars being used well? Are they meeting the needs that are really the most pressing? Are they reaching communities that really have the deepest, inequities that have been the result of just decades of neglect? So those are the kinds of things that you're going to encounter, and I think it's an exciting time to serve. Because we have just so much opportunity to create something that is going to be much more sustainable, much more resilient, and hopefully be able to really support many more Californians for years to come. I just came off of I was guest lecturing with some students at Fresno State before I jumped on this call, all accounting majors, and they all actually had a desire to come into state service because they were hearing how there's great job security as an accountant in state service. And to which I said, yeah, there's great job security, but look at all the great things you get to work on. But it was just really exciting because for young people, one, to not think about leaving California because it's so expensive to be here, but two, really thinking about public service is really, I think, a wonderful, wonderful development, and hope that we can bring that talent into state service. But you all are of talent as well. And I think as you think about regardless of what your discipline is, there are definitely appointments opportunities for all of you. I'm going to ask you to expand your thinking in terms of what you believe you're capable of doing and giving voice to. I'll just, I had a friend who is someone who didn't really think she was going to be appointed to something, and she got appointed to, gosh, what's the board, Catherine, that actually oversees like the security industry and kind of locksmiths and I forget the name of the board, but she had no idea what it was going to do, but she was just so happy that she could bring kind of a practical consumer voice to that board. And that's really important. And I think there are just many, many ways that I think all of you can contribute in this fashion. So thank you for putting the program together tonight. I want to just congratulate all the appointees who are here. For all of you who are thinking about appointments, please do consider applying for them. And then also, I'll just say, my master's is in public administration. This is an area that I think the public sector is going to be undergoing a lot of change going forward. And I think all of you can be a part of just helping to define what that looks like. Because if there's anything that we've learned from this pandemic, both personally, as a state government, professionally, and that is that we're each essential to the other. And as I think about how we rebuild better, there has to be an ability for all of us to be able to just be a voice for each other, to be sure that we're not leaving any communities behind. This governor is intentional with respect to having this be a California for all. So this is not about tokenism. It's about really having people at the table who look like all of us. And so just really happy to be here to offer a few words. And again, thank you to all of you for making this possible. Thank you to Catherine. And I really look forward to working with all of you as you come in to be a part of the state of California family. Thank you.
Thank you, Controller Yee. That was, it always warms my heart when you speak. So thank you so much.
Thank you too.
And I think this is when we come to the question and Q&A for any of our audience members who are out there. We didn't see any earlier. Our presentees couldn't have been that good. They couldn't have answered every one of your questions. So if you would like to, I see Mahdi, would you like to?
Yep, so we got Muhammad Akhtar that has a question. Please go ahead.
I heard the URL earlier of the web page where one can go and fill out the application. Could I request that URL again, please?
So Catherine gave us that URL. If you want to repeat it, please. Catherine, you're on mute. And we will send this out. All right, give us a second to unmute you, Catherine. Try now.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I went on mute when Betty was speaking and then it said, nope, you can't talk anymore. Yes, it is www.gov.ca.gov. And then there is an appointments tab you can hit on.
And we will send it out to everybody after this meeting.
Great.
We do have everyone's email.
Does that site also list all the all the boards and commissions that the state has, besides listing the vacancies?
Yes. So it's a complete list of board and commissions, even those that don't have vacancies at the time. And I would also add that if there's something you're really interested in and you see that there is not a current vacancy on there, there will be. at some point. Many of our boards have certain term limits, so at some point there will be an opening, and again, the deputy will be able to tell you when that would be. If it's something that you don't see the vacancy now, it doesn't hurt to start that process now, and that way you will be ahead of the curve when that vacancy comes up.
Thank you.
And Mohammed, I've looked through that, and I think it's organized alphabetically, and so it literally, I think, is probably about 2,000 pages of information. You learn everything about each organization and who is currently appointed, when they're going off, the exact nature of what they do, the process. It's because I've been looking for a long time, almost for 2 decades, and it's a lot of information, but you can definitely find a lot of stuff there. I know.
Thank you. Are those 2,000 pages to turn an applicant off, or to basically give an idea?
There's actually a shorter document that just has the board and the vacancies. And then the easier way too, if you would like, is because the deputies are listed with their portfolios. For example, if you are interested in any licensing board, that is Diana Essex, and she is listed there. And so you can reach out to her directly. So that also might be an easier way. But there are several resources on there. There is one that is shorter than the 2,000.
Thank you.
Anyone else has a question, please raise your hand.
Okay. I guess our presenters were that good. That's why we got them, right?
Joe, there is a question online on the YouTube channel.
Okay.
And this is by Shabib. Is the public appointment considered and should be treated as a government job application? How do we find vacancies? And I think Catherine answered the second piece of it. Does it treat it as a government job application?
So there is a single application, and that is for if you are asking to be part of the actual administration in a paid full-time job, as well as for the board, which are volunteer positions. And so it is not considered employment. It would be considered a volunteer position.
Very good.
Is that even for Secretary Rivera for like the parole board? I believe that one comes with a salary, doesn't, or a stipend?
So there are some, there are very few. There's maybe 12 boards that are paid boards, both full-time and part-time. But if you're talking about the ones that have public slots, those would all be volunteer. None of those are in a paid position.
Any other questions? Anyone want to raise their hand? Last call before we move on. We'll do another one. Okay, so Sister Wadad's got a question. Go ahead, you can unmute yourself.
Is that okay if I can ask a question?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. So this question could be to anybody. What I am concerned, not only for my Middle Eastern community, I am an American from Baghdad, Iraq. I came here to study electronics engineering, and I worked for the Department of Defense, and I had a wonderful career. So I know exactly what you are talking about when you are explaining the process. My concern is to make sure that the playing field is level. On other issues, I'm really concerned about the broad infrastructure issue because I think it is fundamental to economic growth. Spending, including on R&D, can lift the trend of growth rate and economic growth coupled with attention to the distribution of growth is, in my mind, the easiest way to solve identity and equity issues. So is that something Governor Kevin Newsom think about, appointees think about when you are thinking about the future. We are thinking about our youth, about finding jobs for them, sustainability.
Yes, one is, and I think as Controller Yi pointed out, there's now a situation where there's an equity lens to everything. There used to be a time where people would come to us and say, I want to deal with racial injustice. I want to deal with those types of issues. There's not a certain board that does that. What I tell them is we need to bring that lens to every board, whether it's housing, whether it's water, whether it's workforce development, economic environment, water, all of those need an equity lens. They don't just need an expert in water or the environment. And for example, the governor just approved appointees to a water board who are both women of color who grew up dealing with water quality issues. That's what we were talking about when we talk about like bringing that type of lens and not doing it in the more traditional, I think, way that has been done. So it's definitely something that is on the governor's mind because he does talk about it quite a bit. It's one of the reasons that he has done what he has done around COVID and tying that to the healthy, index and making sure that the leadership is paying attention to those communities. So I think, although I'm talking out of school because appointments is not necessarily my policy. I don't do budgets. I don't do that. I did do that 20 years ago with Betty. But in my arena and from my spending time with this governor, it is something that permeates our administration from both the leadership side of things, from his senior staff down.
I received some questions from people who wanted me to ask the office of Governor Kevin Newsom. So if there is nobody, and if I am permitted, may I ask some more questions?
We have one more agenda item. Shall we move to that?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay,
We'll open
go
up
ahead.
again. How's that sound, Joe?
Let's do that. And then we can come back if we have more time, depending on how long we go with Claremont and Lincoln University. How about we, Dad?
Very good. So do you want to introduce CLU?
So I have the honor of introducing our sponsor of the evening. This is Lincoln University in Claremont, Claremont Lincoln University. And they are going to give us a short presentation on their new Masters in Public. It's funny that the Controller Yi was talking about a Master's in Public Administration earlier. And so Claremont Lincoln University is one of the leading universities in Southern California. And for no further ado, I get to introduce one of my good friends, actually. He's my city council member, Jed Liano. And we also have Arbaz with us and Melissa. And Melissa, would you like to take over from this point?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Joe. What a pleasure and a delight to be here and hear all of this conversation tonight. We are Claremont Lincoln University. We're going to give you a very brief presentation because we really want you to know about this opportunity that is happening right now for a Master in Public Administration. So I'm going to give you a brief picture of the three people that are going to talk. They're all going to be very brief and you'll have time for the Q&A afterwards. You're going to hear from our amazing president of Claremont Lincoln University, Dr. Lynn Pretty. She is a renowned higher education leader with over 35 years of experience and really an illustrious career, but always focused on institutions that have ethics and equity and diversity at their heart. And that is Claremont Lincoln University, and she's taking us into the future. You're going to hear from, very briefly, from Dr. Kendra Smith. She is the chair of our Master in Public Administration program. She's a scholar practitioner, and these are very brief bios of very long, amazing careers, but she's a scholar practitioner. She has a background in community health and health equity, public administration and engagement, really incredible. And of course, you just heard that Jed Liano is here, Mayor Pro Tem of Claremont. He is the chair of our inaugural advisory council, which is an amazing council. He'll tell you about it. He's, the vice chair of the Tri-City Mental Health Board. He is a representative of the San Gabriel Valley Council of Governments, many other things. So I'm going to turn it right over to Jed now, and we'll just run through our program, and we'll have questions afterwards. Thank you all so much for being here. Jed, it's all yours.
Thanks, Melissa. And I just want to tell everybody, I'm really proud to be here to talk right now about Claremont Lincoln's MPA program. But it's so timely because just 3 or 4 minutes ago, Secretary Rivera brought up the fact that we need to look at all policy problems and all policy questions through the lens of equity. And, I'm the vice mayor of Claremont. There's 9 college institutions here in my town. I get asked to join boards and committees on campuses, on a monthly basis. But last summer, after the summer of 2020, after the summer of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, a lot of elected officials like me were wondering, what can I do to promote more equity and justice in policy, not just only in the laws that I pass for my city? And I found that opportunity through Claremont Lincoln University by helping create a master's program that's going to train the next generation of change makers in government. In MPAs, studies in diversity and equity inclusion sometimes are electives. At Claremont Lincoln's MPA program, that's the first class you take. That is the central focus and core of our mission and our academic program. The studies that our master students go through are informed by an advisory council that consists of state leaders like Treasurer Fiona Ma, Senator Scott Wiener, mayors like Tim Sandoval, Bobby Singh Allen, Farrah Khan, council members from places like Claremont, El Monte, school board members from Compton, Linwood, Pasadena. And that's who's helping shape the topics we're studying. So if you want to get an education and focus on a program that is going to help advance your career in government, and the focus is going to be socially conscious education and diversity, equity, inclusion, I strongly encourage you to take a look at our program at Claremont Lincoln. Now I'm going to pass it over to the program chair, Dr. Kendra Smith.
Hello, everyone. It's really great to be here, and thank you, Jed, for the amazing overview of our program. So I have the privilege of being the program chair for the Masters in Public Administration, and I'm incredibly honored because this is such a new and unique program. So Masters in Public Administration programs are not new. However, I believe sincerely that our approach to this MPA program is what makes it new and what makes it unique and what makes it innovative, because as Jed mentioned, we're focused on DE&I, and we're also focused on helping our students become the leaders, the advocates, the community developers, the public administrators that they want to be. We have an advisory committee that Jed is a part of, who has taken a considerable amount of time to help build this program. And we are so mindful and cognizant of helping train up future public administrators or current public administrators who think creatively, who are action oriented, and who have the skill, the knowledge, and the encouragement to do so. So I'm incredibly proud of this program, and I hope that if you're interested in pursuing in continuing your education, that you do consider this program. So I will hand it over to our president of Claremont Lincoln, Dr. Priddy.
Is Dr. Priddy a co-host?
She does have access to speak. Kind of lost her on here.
Let me see.
I'll try one more time. I'm asking her to unmute. There we go.
There we go. Thank you so much. I am keeping you from Q&A, and I just, I am so honored. I'm so excited and thrilled that so many people are looking at becoming appointees and getting involved. Jed captured it right. We have created a new degree designed for those who want to serve those who want to be change makers, those who are activists. And one of the things I want to focus on in every degree at CLU, Claremont Lincoln University, but particularly in the MPA, is this focus on deep, pervasive development of ethical, inclusive, empathic leaders committed to social change. You can see the tenets of the change model on the screen. It really begins with a mindfulness dialogue, a purposeful, intentional development in every aspect of the program, of that inclusiveness, of dealing with disparities. And anchoring it is our capstone. So if you are involved in the program, it's not as if you're studying and then you're going to go out and create change. The program itself and the Claremont Core, which is this driving, pervasive focus on leadership that's inclusive, focused on diversity, focused on equity, you will be involved in a challenge, a capstone project or internship, something you are passionate about, and you will build it throughout that program. You will apply it throughout the program, and you will create change. It allows you to serve while you're learning. So really excited about that. Another thing, you heard about the MPA Advisory Council, but we are also backed by the largest land policy institute in the United States. So the Lincoln Institute of Land Policy, hence our name, Claremont Lincoln University, has invested millions and millions of dollars in municipalities to create incredible change. And we could talk forever on that. But right now, they have helped us also create this program. They want it to be relevant. They want it to be cutting edge. They want it to come with a network of peers in other municipalities, as well as those in Southern California. And so they are offering $100,000 in fellowships. Actually, they have now committed another $100,000 as well, up to 20 $10,000 fellowships for everyone who joins our MPA program. It's in celebration of their 75th anniversary of trying to solve social inequities through land policy. So I really encourage you to look at the degree. If you're interested, connect with Kendra, call me, we'll send you the information, talk to Jed, we'll get you involved. And just to kind of leave you with a link for us, it is that our students will say to us, I am forever changed. And in fact, one of our students from 2017, you may know him. His name is Joseph Williams. He actually is a governor appointee. He was a member of the California Community Colleges Board of Governors. He was appointed to the Workforce Board for the state of California. He is an elected member of the San Bernardino Community College of Board of Trustees. But most importantly, he is a voice and an advocate for CLU. You don't just attend CLU. It's more than an institution. It's a movement. It's actually designed for people just like you. Anyone who wants to become a public servant, a public leader, to make a difference, that's what we're about. We help you build a degree that allows you to focus on what matters most to make a significant difference for our communities so they're abundant and they thrive. That's our goal. That's our vision. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lynn and Kendra.
I think I want to apply now.
Good. We're all for that. Are there any questions for Dr. Priddy or Dr. Smith or Jed, Vice Mayor Jed Liano?
If anyone has a question, they can raise their hand and we'll unmute you. I don't see any questions.
Okay, well, thank you all for having us so much. We were delighted to be here.
Oh, there is one question. There's one question. Don't run away too quick. Mama Doctor has a question.
Yes, thank you so much. What we just heard about the CLU program, that is a degree program. Do you also have some like executive courses that maybe one can do to kind of get the basics of it and get some principles on policy making laws with equity in mind?
I am so glad you asked that. Absolutely. Actually, we are just getting ready to launch several advanced practice executive certificates. We also have courses that you can just elect to take individually. And then we also offer non-credit workshops. And perhaps most importantly, and Jed can tell you this, come to us. We've actually, one of our signatures is that we will create specific programming for groups, for organizations, for businesses. We just worked with Para Los Niños, Trinity Youth Services, all on diversity, equity. Really, how do you build that into every aspect of your workforce and your operations? So an entire continuum, all graduate, however, nothing undergraduate. So again, contact us, absolutely. And definitely this summer, check out our advanced practice certificates, building one directly around policy, law, finance, all of those things that everybody doesn't necessarily like, but really, really needs to make a difference.
Thank you. My name happens to be the first on the list, at least on my screen. If you could send me your email.
Absolutely. This is Mohammed.
I appreciate. That's correct. Thank you.
You know, Lynn, you might want to also talk about how it's perfect for working adults.
Yeah, actually, so just so everybody knows, the average age of our student is 42. They are working professionals. The entire program is designed to be online. It does come with a network. You know, our building is in Claremont. You can always come to the building, but the program is anywhere from 13 to 18 months long. You can take 2 courses at a time, 1 course at a time. You can take time off. You can come back. You can shift it. It literally is designed for those already in public service, those aspiring, or anyone who is a savvy career changer and now wants to become a public leader. It's flexible. Right now, we are approximately 50% diverse in terms of our students as well as our faculty. And we are also about a 25-75 split, 75% female. So a little bit more about us. You can tell we're a little passionate.
Absolutely true.
Any other questions? You can raise your hand. There is one more question, and it's by Durya Sayed, and I'll unmute.
I really want to thank you for having this forum. I don't know how many times I have thought about joining the forum actually I have this question for the appointee, not the Claremont. So so thank you so much for, I've met Betty so many times and we have, ask about how to join the commission. I was actually sitting today for one of the young community member who couldn't make it. Just wanted to know if this recording will be available. And the second question is, when we are going out and applying on the application and stuff, can we apply for more than one board at a time?
So I'll answer your first question. Yes, this recording will be available, and we'll send it out with the link when we send out all the other information. And Joe, I'll hand over the other question to you and Catherine.
I think Catherine had to drop off, Secretary had to drop off, but I'm happy to answer that. Yes, you can apply for many positions simultaneously, and that's encouraged.
Okay, thank you.
I would just add to that, Angela, that in the application process, it's good to rank. They'll encourage you to put 2 or 3 or 4 even, just to see which one may become available first. So good to just in your order of interest, at least put in 3 or 4. I was told 6, but at least 3 or 4, that would be advisable.
Thank you so much. I was sitting for somebody else and I feel like I'm more interested in applying now. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any other questions? We're opening up questions both for Claremont Lincoln University as well as for the appointee process. Wadad, you had a couple of questions pending. Do you want to answer those questions, ask those questions now?
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate it. Some people had asked questions. So this is for anyone. San Diego is considered to be perhaps the second, if not the first largest city for immigrants. So there are a lot of needs for those immigrants that come from different countries fleeing war and oppression. Many of the people who work in nonprofit organizations have asked me to ask you. They need more services on know your rights and responsibilities in different languages, especially on hate crimes. More understanding and cooperation from school districts with parents and youth. Anti-bullying policies and counseling for students with trauma. Tenants' rights for newcomers. These are issues that face our refugees, and they are very real, and we are welcoming them, and we should welcome them with dignity by making those documentation clear on different languages. So, and may I ask the other question also? Or should I wait until somebody answers this?
We want to make sure that we can answer the questions, because I'm not sure. Those are like policy questions, and I don't know if any of our panelists would have the expertise to answer those.
Okay. The other question has to do with a bill that was introduced on a federal level, actually, called BREATHE. And the BREATHE bill was constructed by the organization BREATHE, which stands for Breonna Taylor, Rodney King, Eric Garner, Ahmaud Arbery, Trayvon Martin, Howard Bowie, and etc. That's the E for BREATHE. So can anybody tell us what is the status of this bill? Is it easy to track it?
I would think that we could probably contact a local legislator and find out those bills and where they are in the legislative process. Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Last call for questions before we wrap up. Joe, it doesn't look like we have any questions, so do you want to proceed to wrap?
Yeah, I want to thank everyone for being here, especially Claremont Lincoln University, and to our panelists, Dr. Farouk and Dr. Kazi, and to Controller Betty Yee, and to our special guest, Secretary Rivera, and my co-host, Wadad Schulte. Thank you so much for being here, everyone. And thank you for staying on this call for this long. We had, I think at one point, maybe 45 participants, and I think probably about 55 people hop on and off. And thank you very much, and have a great evening. And this is available on our YouTube channel, and we'll send it out to everyone who gave us an email when they registered. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Good job. Excellent. Oh, okay.